Well, we're happy to have Dr. John Schwandt with us from Redemption Seminary. He is the president of Redemption Seminary, but more importantly, he's a friend, and when I was with Faith Life, a colleague then, so former colleague, but still a colleague in a new way, and that's what we're really here to talk about. Uh, I'm going to say up front, again, for the Awakening School students, that this is why we're having the conversation, why I wanted to have it. It's for you because, again, believe it or not, I'm just going to put this out up front, and some of you may not believe it, but it is true. If you are an Awakening School student and you complete the 2-year certificate in our program, you, because of a partnering agreement with John, you can move that into Redemption Seminary. They have a master's degree program, and that in turn will lead with one extra class at a school in Sioux Falls. It's called a capstone course. It's really not even a course, but we're going to talk about that. But one extra, bit of work to do at Sioux Falls, you will graduate with a master's degree, an accredited master's degree in theological studies. So if you're at the Awakening School, we are not accredited. We're not going to pursue accreditation. But this is the beginning point of a real, not just a sort of fantasy, okay, a real path to an accredited master's degree in theological studies. And so we're going to spend, probably the next 20, 25 minutes talking about this and laying this out for you. But I wanted all the Awakening students to know that if there are among that number any who really want to pursue a master's degree, an accredited degree in theological stuff, okay, you can do that. And here's the kicker. For our older students, sort of our adult, students that have lots of life and ministry experience and, some Bible under their belt as well, if you never went to college, that's okay. You do not have to have a bachelor's degree to get this accredited master's degree. Okay, yes, you heard me correctly. That was not a blip, okay, in video. That is true. So John, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, tell us, who you are, maybe where you went to school, what your academic field of expertise is, but, obviously we want to talk about Redemption Seminary and just go through step by step, what I just introduced there. So take it away.
Sure. Well, thanks. It's always a joy to talk to you. It's always thought-provoking whenever I listen to you or have a conversation. So this is always a treat. So thank you. And
that's better than it's always irritating.
No. Yeah, it's always helpful. So yeah, my name is John Schwandt. To your audience, my expertise is in New Testament. I taught Greek and New Testament for almost 20 years at New St. Andrews College before coming to Logos, where I worked on the mobile ed team, directed that. And now, in the last 2 years, I've been focused on really solving the problem of how we can make higher education at the graduate level make common sense, because we've been on a path for quite a while now where that's how I call it, the industrialized model, where you have classrooms, where students, come into the machine, they get reframed, and they leave stamped with the school's stamp. And that has its benefits and scale, but really we're beyond the benefits of what the industrialized mindset can do. That the technological promise of technology isn't the big machine. It's relational. It's scaling one-on-one relationships. That's what we've really found as the benefit of technology. And so that's what I've pressed here, is how can we make education more relational, which really is lost in the machine. I don't know how many professors I got to know in my experience. Yeah. I went to my undergrad was at the University of Idaho. It was actually in landscape architecture, so that's where I got design thinking kind of ingrained in me. And then I went to Westminster Seminary, got an MA, taught for 20 years, and along the way got a Doctor of Ministry at Gordon Conwell. So the degree or the program that we're producing is highly relational, first and foremost. And I want to put that at, right at the beginning,
Hmm.
because a lot of schools now are, with the new situation of the COVID, are revamping and retrofitting their programs to try to move the traditional model online, and
Yeah.
a model that I think is flawed for our time and now made less than, accommodated. And so and one of the first things that goes away is the relational model, or
Yeah,
relational side
that's
of things.
true. When you have this myth, and I was blessed, there were one or two of my professors in college, and, again, about the same number, in seminary. And really, I didn't have it at all in grad school. But you think at the beginning that I'm going to go to seminary and I'm going to sit at the feet of Professor so and we're just going to have these wonderful discussions over coffee and go out to lunch and I don't know, play beach volleyball together or whatever. And look, it's not that way.
Right,
There's only one of them and they have hundreds of students.
right.
It's extraordinarily rare. This is one of the great memories I have of Norm Geisler, the couple of years I spent at Dallas. Geisler was one of the few that just always had students over at his house. And you may have only done it once or twice, but the fact that he did it with regularity, and then you could put a face to a name. He could, because again, hundreds and hundreds of students. Professors have to be extraordinarily intentional about it. And to be honest with you, they're burdened by, not just the class time, but they do have to write. They get involved in academic societies. They get involved in publishing boards and editorial this and that and the other. It's just not real. It's not real. It's a fantasy. Um, that's just a reality of it. So this is one thing that an online model can do, but up to this point, online models have not done that. They've actually sort of depersonalized the process. Now, I spent 10 years as an online, adjunct for Liberty, and trust me, it's not very personal. You're essentially a grading machine, and you don't see anybody in discussion boards. You see text. Okay, this is what you do, and so that again, the online model, as up to this point, has its own mythology that
Yeah, yeah,
we have to come to grips with. It's only been in the last year or so where things like FaceTime and like one-to-one video. I mean, but again, and Zoom, which we're using right now. COVID has sort of pushed that envelope a little bit. And you're right, John. I mean, there are a handful of schools that sort of saw this coming and saw the deficiencies of the online model and have been trying to do something with it. But most of the other schools are, you use the word retrofitting. Okay, that's what they're doing. They're that's a nice word. That's an academic term for scrambling. Okay, that's what they're doing. How are we going to cope with this new reality and compete with these other models? Well, and the answer for many of them is, well, let's do the same thing they're doing. Uh,
yeah,
that is not what Redemption is doing. Redemption is trying to change the model, and you've been in this full time for the last 2 years. You're
right.
pursuing the accreditation thing, structuring the classes, but the discussion, both on your part and my part, because I was there at Faith Life Logos in the early days. I was one of the 3 people who created mobile ed. This discussion has been going on for years. And so Redemption Seminary is sort of the culmination in many ways of
Yeah,
that discussion.
right.
So what we want to do is we want to talk about what we can do for students and how we don't want to, we can intentionally not disadvantage students.
Yeah,
For the
and
sake
there's
of the
so many
model.
ways that to advantage them, and missed opportunities in the current model. So the relational component and the way we've solved that is through one-on-one mentoring with every course. But then that creates another problem of
That's
what.
difficult math, John. 1 on 1.
Well,
I got it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I like it because it's highly relational. There's nowhere to hide, and you get that personal, the personal guidance that you're expecting. So that happens. So in every course, we have a 7-week sequence of 7 mentored meetings. Now, we also wanted to allow students to work at their own pace. And
Mhm.
so that was a real challenge too. How do we balance uh, an extremely elastic model where somebody can take as long as they want, of course, and one-on-one mentoring? And so the way we did that is we have 10 courses in the degree program, and a student, as soon as they start, they get access to all of the materials, all of the lectures. The lectures are mobile ed lectures, which we can
Mhm.
talk about. The quality of those are just, you know, uh, nothing compares to those. We took the best instructors across
Mhm.
the nation, uh, people like Dr. Walke, Douglas Moo, Craig Evans, Michael Heiser. Uh,
Darrell Bock's in there. John Walton's in there. Yeah.
right, brought them all in, had them give their actual courses without repetition, which boiled it down and made the lectures. We took, one lecture is 1 point, so their lectures are all in bite-sized, less than 10-minute pieces.
Mhm.
Uh, and so that's our lecture component. We have readings that are all included in the program, so no surprises. I know, great, I signed up for this course and I, have to buy extra books or anything. So all the readings are included, all the assignments, and they can work through the entire course, and you fill out a workbook, which I call a portfolio instead of a large paper or high stakes exam. Along the way, you
Yeah.
can be filling that out, applying it to your life, which is another piece that often is neglected in
Yeah.
online
It's
education.
incremental learning and processing.
Yeah, and relevancy, applying it to your life. When we were applying for our nonprofit status, I had to prove to the IRS that yes, we don't have classrooms in the traditional sense, but that's okay because we we can't. Our classroom is the student's life. They need to apply these things to their life and their context. If it's like field work,
Mhm.
and if you don't apply your theology to your true life, you're missing a critical component of your study. And
Yeah.
and that, yeah, go
I was
ahead.
gonna say, I mean, this is a good juncture to point out. Look, what you're hearing is Redemption Seminary follows a one-to-one mentor model. That's a key component that no other program has. All right. The other thing is the academic content is legit. Now, again, I was there in the early days of mobile ed at Faith Life, also at that point known as Logos Bible Software. And again, being one of the people who invented this, I remember having conversations with professors, that we were going to fly in here because initially it was my job to select them. All right. So you'd have these conversations, and I'd say, look, what we want is we want your actual class, and we want it in a certain amount of time, and we want it segmented. I mean, and we have they couldn't believe it. Well, this is a 15-week class. How am I going to do this in 10 hour? It's like, just trust me. Okay, you know as well as I do, there's so much wasted time in the classroom because you're talking about what you said last time, and you're talking about the football game, and you got to go over this assignment and that assignment. Oh, and there's this handout that the school has, and oh, did you hear in chapel this? They want us to remind you of that. I mean, there's just and 10-15 minutes almost routinely at a pop just wasted in class. And so it's like, look, you send us your slides, we will segment them. If can't, I mean, we will invent the sandbox and you'll play in it, and just trust me. And now we're like 150 courses later, years later, from the best professors in the country and really internationally, and they found out they could do it. Okay, so the courses that you will get, the course content you would get at Redemption in this program, is the same content that you would get if you went to that professor's home institution. It is. We forced them to do that, and some of them doubted, but they learned that they could do it, and they were shocked. I remember some of them were really shocked
Yeah.
that they could condense their class like that.
Well, yeah, and you're focused on one point. You don't have to bring people back up to speed from the
Right.
last class. It really boils down, and I think it makes it better for adult learning.
Yeah, and you're
Yeah,
not interrupted. There's any number of things that happen. Just give us your content.
yes.
We want you. That's what we want. We want your content, and you'll be able to do it. Students will love it. People in the local church who aren't going to move, and then they're going to love it. They want to hear what you have to say. And so, again, the content's high, and you have the one-to-one mentoring relationship. So let's talk a little bit about how this path would actually work. So let's say I'm an Awakening School student. Okay, we're one semester into this now, or even if I'm if people watching this maybe a year later or whatever it is, but I'm going to get that certificate. I'm going to get that 2-year certificate from the Awakening School. And now what? I mean, what's the path here to getting into redemption, and then where does that go? So let's talk about that.
Yeah, so it's pretty easy, and you can't really mess it up. Because they can be. That's it's nice for adults, and who are. As an adult, I know that that's one of the things I've learned how to do is is find how to break things.
Right. I'm going to improvise this and break the whole thing.
So you can take them concurrently. There's basically what it happens is, the Awakening certificate counts for the second to last course in the MABS program, which is a 6-credit course.
In the redemption program. So
Right.
Like the Awakening certificate would count as the last course in that program.
Right. That's what I meant. So you can finish the Awakening certificate first and then start the redemption program, or you can, if you have time or breaks, or the space to do them at the same time, it's fine to start the redemption program and start ticking away the courses. There's no risk in the redemption courses. The first one is fully refundable if you don't find it a good match, and then it's just kind of pay as you go. If you feel like if you ended up paying getting ahead of the courses that you've actually taken, and it's not a good fit, well, you just stop. So there's no risk in that.
So it's not like joining a gym.
Right.
Where I'm locked in for 3 years, whether I go.
No. Again, we're trying to advantage the students, trying to make this all common sense. You pay for what you get. And actually, you get way more than you pay for, because if you graduate, when you graduate, you get the degree, you get the library as a gift. And the library that we assembled to do all the research in the program is a $23,000 Logos library worth of books. And I'm just so thankful that Logos got behind this mission and was willing to do this deal with us, that we're able to offer this. So you get access while you're in the program, and then when you graduate, you get to keep it, which is a big deal, because you're training how to use this library, and you want to use it afterwards.
So if I'm an Awakening student, I can think, okay, I'm going to do the Awakening 2-year thing first, and then jump into redemption. And essentially what I've done here will move into that program and save me, a certain amount of time that, it would normally take. Or I could, while I'm doing, the Awakening courses, I could jump in right then. I mean, I can do it concurrently. I can do it, consecutively, whatever model there is. How much time a week do you think, let's just take one course at redemption? Like how is this broken down?
Well, if you wanted to finish the course in 7 weeks, which is rather aggressive, it'd be 15 hours a week.
That is, that's aggressive. That's like a whole course in half a semester. Yeah.
Right. So you could spread it out and make it, just an hour every other night or something could get you through the course at a pretty good pace. And it's, again, each course is broken into 7 units, which correspond to these 7 sequential mentor meetings. And so if you want to take a course at a fast pace, you do 1 unit per each week you're working with a mentor, or you could do all the units first and then do the 7 sequence and review and show the mentor what you've done. And then each of those units, those weekly units, we've split into 5 lessons, and that would be the synonym for class. And so each of those classes we've designed to be about 1 to 2 hours of work. So a 10-minute video, a 10-minute reading, a 10-minute study in using logo software and training how to do it, 10 minutes in reflecting and working on the workbook and then doing that again would be one of these lessons.
So
So you can break that in half or whatever you want.
so basically a course is going to be 35 of these 1 to 2 hour increments.
Mhm.
And what I'm hearing is if I want to just like do one of those a day, I can. If I want to do one of those a week, I can. If I want to do one every 2 weeks, I can. It's entirely up to me. You know,
Yep.
again, I set my schedule, I set the pace, and when I'm ready to have my the meeting that needs to have with the one-on-one meeting with the mentor to discuss the work I've been doing and the content, then I pick when that happens. That's correct?
That's exactly right. And if you want to really dig into an area more than what's required, we have recommendations for additional optional readings, and so you can expand it as you want, which I think is an important part of higher ed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you actually get to camp a little bit on something you want because whether it's online or your traditional green campus. I mean, a class is designed to essentially herd the student through an amount of content in a certain amount of time, and the professor doesn't have time to, hey, I know everybody would like to spend an extra hour talking about dichotomy versus tricot, but we don't have time for that because I have to get through the syllabus, I have to get through the content, because the accrediting body says I have to get through these things. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So you don't have the luxury of rabbit trailing. So even if I'm the awakening student, I'm doing one of these at Redemption, I'm doing 1 unit a week. Okay. If I want to take a week off and just drill down on something because I like it, I can do that.
That's right. That's right.
There's nothing that says I can't.
Yeah, and we encourage that. So, and let me talk about how you finish off then,
Okay.
and actually get the degree. So as long as you finish the awakening degree before that second to last course, you can replace that second to last course, which was designed to focus you in and allow you to pick an area of theology that you really want to dig into and explore, in the last class, which is writing a sustained argument about that. So that's why the awakening certificate is perfect to replace that piece. So then
Yeah, let's say there was something in the awakening content that, man, I'd like to pick a topic, Tartarus. Okay, this is random, but I want to spend my thinking and research time on Tartarus, and this is going to be my project. I mean, this is the only written thing in the whole program at Redemption, if I understand the program correctly. I mean, otherwise you're doing, you're building this portfolio or this incremental sort of assessment, as you're going on, that your mentor is going to have access to that, and then when you actually meet, that's an oral assessment. It's a conversation.
right.
But there's one point where you're going to have to pick a topic, and you're going to be shepherded through a research and a writing project, and so yeah, if an awakening student could pick something that's part of the unseen realm content and go to town on it, and then that becomes the thing that you're that final project is based on.
That's right. And then if there's a mentor that's available, maybe Michael Heiser or another awakening staff, that person could be the mentor for the final project and really inform. And because that's what it's all about is relating theology, using a scholar to relate theology to your life. And so we want to have people that are contextualized to do that best.
The dynamic there is actually, I mean, John's obviously going to know this, but that's actually a lot of what happens in doctoral work, where you and your advisor sort of just, chew the fat about your topic, and that can be really, really helpful. So there's kind of a component of that. I mean, it's not just pure academic, tit for tat, kind of thing, the way, certain relationships with advisors are to sharpen you or probe your material for weakness, for your dissertation. But but it is this one-on-one conversational thing about something that you're really interested in. So that's kind of nice. You get that, kind of relationship with a professor that you might have thought, if you were a traditional seminary student like I was, that, oh, this is going to happen every week. Now, you're probably lucky if that ever happens at all, in a semester in an MDiv program. But here you get that component as
Right.
well.
And these last two classes, they're 6 credit classes each, and they take double the time. So instead of 7 weeks, they're the 14.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Awakening certificate really saves a full semester's worth of time
Yeah.
in the process. So then after you graduate from Redemption, you have a Redemption degree. It is not accredited at this point in time, but we did not want to disadvantage students, and so we wanted to provide an accredited path. So we have a wonderful arrangement with Sioux Falls Seminary, where, yep, and they're a competency-based program. So you don't get credits awarded upon courses completed. You get credits awarded by demonstrations of competency. And so we've designed our program with them in mind. And so they have confirmed that the Redemption degree is a demonstration, of what they require in their
what
degree.
they're looking for.
Right. And so I will be the mentor for this last component at Sioux Falls Seminary. They're actually going to hire me to do these additional mentor pieces for them, since I know the Redemption context and can vouch for what has been done in the program, sign off on the competencies that have been demonstrated. And then it's a capstone project where we examine how the student is applying these things once again in their lives as a program. How are they applying these, their growth and what they've learned in the program to their life? And that takes anywhere from 1 month to 3 months, or 1 month to 4 months to complete. And so you would, at the completion of that, you would get the Sioux Falls Seminary 36 credit accredited degree.
Mm-hmm.
So people end up, if they go through that full process, end up with 2 degrees, one currently unaccredited from Redemption and the other accredited from Sioux Falls Seminary.
Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously we're not going to look into a crystal ball here, but just on paper, you're probably 1 to 2 years away from, like candidate status, or, I mean, this is not like 10 years down the road, the Redemption itself is going to be accredited. This is actually, fairly close.
That's right. Yeah. And the accreditors are ever so conscientious about, limiting what we can say about, so we don't mislead students and give them false hope. I don't think we've provided a path that allows for accreditation, but yes, it's well possible that when someone graduates, Redemption could be accredited. And at that point, you don't even need to do the Sioux Falls Seminary component.
Yeah, you wouldn't even need to tack on that last, capstone project. But you
don't need to. It's only if you want to, and it's there waiting for you. So you don't. Yeah. You could actually delay it if you wanted. You could say, "Well, I'll wait and see, what happens, for a couple of years before going."
Right. That's actually pretty slick. If you hear the rumor that, hey, we're going to get our accreditation awarded to us in the next 2 months, well, I'm not going to register for that other thing, and I'm just going to wait. Because once that time interval passes, then I have the accredited degree anyway.
That's right.
Yeah, that's good. There's going to be, people that are watching this video that would say, well, this is all wonderful. I can get an accredited degree, a master's degree in theological studies, in a pretty short amount of time. But I'm eliminated from that possibility because I don't have a bachelor's degree. Okay, again, that is not true. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So I think Paul talks about this, the Apostle Paul. He says, when I was a child, I learned as a child, I reasoned as a child. And when I was an adult, I reasoned as an adult. Yeah. And adult reasoning should not be discounted. As you grow in life, we learn things and we experience things, and we should give credit for that. We should say, yes, this person can run with the the pros. Given enough background, why can't they reason as an adult in this area of theology?
Yeah.
So we're providing some context, and thankfully, the accreditation commissions. I've been talking with them about this, and it is fine for us to be admitting people into. We have an open enrollment model where we're not trying to be exclusive. We're trying to follow a gospel model
Yeah.
and call everyone. And so if you have if you have a high school diploma and have 6 years of life experience, that's sufficient. You've been in, you have a ministry narrative where maybe it's not full-time ministry, it's just you working,
Right.
doing things in the church. You just explain,
Yep.
you provide that narrative. It's not a test or a prior learning assessment. It's just a description of how you've grown over the past, since you've left high school, and that's enough. We'll take you from
Yeah.
there and have you reasoning with the scholars.
Yeah. I mean, this makes sense because what like an MDiv, okay, which is a 96 whatever credit hour. It's like 3 years, but in real life, it's probably 4. But this is supposed to prepare you for doing ministry. And again, the MDiv by design, and this is intentional, so this is not a pejorative comment. The MDiv is designed to be a mile wide and an inch deep because it's designed to give the pastor exposure to everything, every field that they need exposure to, and then give them the tools to keep drilling down in any one of those fields and then learn how to do ministry. Well, if you got out of high school and you became a believer 5 years later and you wound up being a youth pastor or a teaching pastor at some point in your life, and you've been doing that for a few years, well, guess what? You're doing the same thing that guy with the MDiv has,
Right.
and chances are, you've been motivated to learn lots of stuff along the way. Why shouldn't you be looked at the same way? It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But that's the current model, which again it needs some adaptation. It needs some change.
Yeah. So what else do we have to?
Well, I mean that again, the path is, I think, discernible. Again, this is not a terribly lengthy conversation, but that is the path. You can start out with just, again, a high school diploma, life experience, and that's a narrative that you would write out or explain to the admissions people at Redemption. Let's talk about cost.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
this is a big bugaboo, for me. Again, in the early days of mobile ed, we just, thinking about that, we wanted to design something that would result in people learning good, solid biblical content. And of course, that would not require them to uproot their families and quit their jobs and then go work at McDonald's while they train for another career, in ministry. And oh, by the way, you quit a ministry to train for a minute. I mean, there are a lot of things about the traditional model that doesn't make sense, which, this is why distance ed, sort of popped up in the first place to solve these problems. But people are shocked when they look at the cost of online and they realize, hey, they're charging me the same amount of per credit hour as if I went to the campus. Well, they have to do that to maintain the green campus, because if they didn't, nobody would go there. So it's like, what do we do now to pay off the buildings and all the people who work here? This is their livelihood. So it's a big problem. But if you don't have to deal with that, which Redemption does not, it is completely online. You can charge a lot less. All right. Well, John had to change locations again. This is, since you're recording things. Somebody decided to cut their lawn, so he went inside. But we want to talk for our last component about the cost again, and this is something I've always been sensitive to, because it shocks people that they can pay, they can be in debt, and most students go into debt. They don't have this kind of cash up front. But for a simple 2-year master's degree, it's not uncommon that that's going to cost you 25 grand. For an MDiv, it could be 40, 50, $1,000 that you're in debt. And, honestly, you're going into the ministry, and you're not going to get paid, chances are, a whole lot, to start. And so there's a sustainability problem. Plus, before you were doing ministry and you didn't have any debt, but now you uprooted your life, you moved, or whatever the circumstances, and now you get to go, to incur all this extra debt and start a new ministry where nobody knows you, or there's all sorts of problems and disconnects here. But let's just talk pure numbers, okay? What does the entire program at Redemption cost?
Well, the bottom line cost, including with all books, everything included, can be less than $8,000.
Wow.
Depending on if you pay up front, it's less than $8,000, or you can do a monthly plan, up to a 2-year monthly plan that puts it at around $360 a month for those 2 years. And that number was very intentional for us. We started with the question, well, what's affordable? We don't want to create a system that no one can afford, and that's because that's what we have right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then pack as much quality in there as we can. So
it's not uncommon, again, and this is probably on the lower end, maybe sort of maybe a middling thing, again, because when we were in mobile ed, we took a look at a lot of these numbers, so this is not, I'm not inventing numbers here. This is reality. You can go read catalogs and this is what you're going to find. But it's not uncommon to pay, 6, 7, 8,000 a semester at one of these, traditional, seminaries, or at least 8, 9, 10,000 a year. I mean, this entire program is essentially a fraction, a third, or maybe even, smaller than that, of a traditional seminary program. I mean, it's just, I can't be more plain about it. People are shocked at how expensive seminary really is.
Well, yeah, and you get to keep the library.
Yeah, so we didn't even factor that in. You get a $23,000 library at the end of it. Yeah. So you need to elaborate on that a little bit.
So I'm just thrilled that Logos, saw what we were trying to do, and stood with us and allowed us to create this system where students have access to the $23,000 library as they're a student, and then when they graduate, they get to keep it as a graduation gift. And that's a huge thing. I pleaded with my seminaries to keep access open to the libraries when I graduated, and they wouldn't do it for me. They just didn't have a system for it. So.
Yeah, I'm old enough to remember that too. Like, you get to the end of the road and it's like, okay, let me see if I understand this. All these books, these tools, these databases that I've been using for every class the whole time I'm here. Now I'm an alumnus, and now I don't get to use them anymore. I'm cut off. Instead, you're going to send me your magazine. I don't want your magazine. Okay, what I want is I want access to the journals. I want to continue to do research and to learn. Again, I could probably burst a gasket if you let me on that. Because that I just remember as being tragic. Where guys would graduate and they'd go out into ministry, and they don't, if they have a question, if they were in class, they would just go look up a journal article and download it. Oh no, you can't do that now because you're graduated.
Right.
Just don't ask that question, or like what? It just didn't make any sense. But in this model, again, through Logos, you're able to access the huge, this huge library that Logos has while you're in the program. And then when you graduate, you get to keep all of it. I mean, that's crazy good is what it is. $23,000 library, it's gifted to you as a graduate.
Yeah. Well, it's really, again, the way things should be. You should come out of seminary with more than you went in with. You should grow.
Right. Wouldn't that be awesome? What a thought,
Yeah. Well, it should, right? I mean, the whole idea is to build yourself up to actually become more. So yeah, the cost should make sense. There should be that uh, growth in mind and spirit along the way. And I think we've really put this a program together that does this and is not just as Al Mohler said once, the best online education is good as an average traditional, but will never be as good as the best. We don't want to have a program aspire to be less than.
Right.
I think what we've done here is let's talk about a program that is the next way to do education. And it doesn't have to be, when we talk about the mentoring, oftentimes it would be online, but it doesn't have to be. If your mentor is your pastor or someone local, it could be local. So I like to use the term distributed education rather than online education, because I think online education is becoming devalued.
Yeah, yeah. And again, because it is very impersonal when you really get down to it. It's I don't know, introvert heaven or something like that. It just where I never have to really interact with anyone face to face. Which if you're going into ministry, you got to kind of wonder. You probably ought to think about overcoming that
Yeah.
aversion or that weakness. But at least you get that you get interaction with somebody who, again, is at the professor level. I mean, they have PhDs. They can listen to you talk about a subject. They can have a discussion to sharpen you. They're going to want to know, okay, well, how are you using this? Give me an example of how, this really helped you, like teach an adult Sunday school or interact at youth group or whatever. It's good to have somebody that can get you to think along those lines and be thinking about applying it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they ask the questions that you weren't even thinking about asking. A lot of those have to do with application.
Hmm.
So I would like to answer one other question that probably
Okay.
will come up. And so, when we're talking about the library as a gift and, the cost, which I delighted, usually cost is a negative word. In this context, I'm just thrilled anytime anybody asks me how much it costs, because it's actually
Yeah.
works out to be, less than what I pay for, my kids to go to junior high.
Yeah. If
So
if they've looked at numbers at all and then they ask you the question,
yeah,
they're going to get they're going to get startled in the reverse direction, in the right way.
and we have no risk, so you can stop anytime, or you can pause. Say, look, I'm just going to pause for whatever, and that's fine. So you pause and start back, and there's no penalties in there, because again, we're trying to have it be common sense. So part of common sense would be, well, wait a second. If the awakening certificate counts for the 6 credits uh, at the second to last course, what kind of discount do I get?
Hmm.
And what the savings is a savings of a semester's worth of time. We have reduced our costs. It's clearly we've reduced them so much that we don't have any room to. There's not much savings by changing
Right.
that out. Um, and and partly, it has to do with the library that is gifted. There's a lot of factors into it. So I just want to be upfront about that. The savings is a tremendous savings in time.
So it's like
Uh,
14, 15 weeks, like
oh, yeah.
a semester. Yeah. Yeah.
And then you have that contextual fit between what you're doing at the Awakening and then what your final paper would be,
Hmm.
with hopefully an Awakening mentor at the
Hmm.
end.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're certainly willing to do that. I mean, John and I have had, long discussions about this whole, opportunity, which is, again, this is why I wanted to have the conversation, why I wanted to record it, so that our students know. I mean, they're into the ground floor here. If you are, and there's going to be somebody, among our students. I don't know if it's one or if it's 100. I mean, who knows? But for those people who just love, learning scripture, and they want to take more classes, they want more. Um, we're not going to, again, personally, at the Awakening School, we're not going to pursue accreditation. But here is a path where A, we don't need to, and B, you don't need us to. We don't have to reinvent that wheel. because that would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, to do that. Schools, institutions, they pass that on to the students. We don't need to do any of that, and we're not going to do any of that. So what we have here is a completely different model. It's a pathway to start with us, or concurrently, you can jump right into redemption now. But at the end of the road, and again, it's 10 classes and a capstone, and your awakening certificate would move into that and save you, a whole semester's worth of time. You can emerge with an accredited master's degree in theological studies. I mean, it's there if you want it. And at the end of the day, we just want to, raise awareness about this. If you want to do this, you can do it at your own time, your own pace, and it is far less expensive than any other online program you're going to run into. So, John, I want to thank you for being with us. Again, I think we're going to have students emerge from the Awakening School that are going to want to do this. They're going to love it. Again, since it utilizes the mobile ed, I mean, I know what the content level is. It's good stuff. So, that, and then married to a relational, one-on-one, mentoring sort of component, which is quite unique. I think this would be a really good experience for someone who wants to take that path. So thanks for being with us.
Thank you. I can't wait to see the First Awakening students work through the program. It's going to be a great fit.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
All right.